that's maybe some minor things. I didn't care about that. But just a few days before that, that operation date, after return from Dien Bien Chief, one of my eyes couldn't see anything. I lost the vision on the left eye. Oh. So I went to the hospital and have a check. So they told me that the lens, the natural lens, was damaged. Oh. So also the doctor didn't know why, because normally the natural aging is not that early. Yeah. Only for the people of 70, 80 years or so. So in my age, 50, maybe too young for the natural aging. So they suspected that I may use some kind of medicine or something that have some side effect that damage the lens. Or I got some kind of injury. For example, if my eye hit something hard, and that may broke the lens. Okay. So I told them I didn't take any major medicine right now. I didn't have any injury, but they said it may happen maybe long time back. For example, if you got hit maybe 10 years ago, the eye getting weaker, and one day it totally damaged, for example. So that may be something, because in the past I got maybe some incident, someone punched my eye. So yeah, that may be 20 years ago. It's a very long time ago. But I think I just only think that is only the reason, because otherwise I didn't have any other thing. I didn't take any strange medicine or thing. So it was a big surprise, and I got shocked because I lost one eye. They could kind of repair your lens now with I don't know what. Yeah. So they got the surgery and they changed, they replaced by artificial lens. That's awesome. So now, yeah. So now I can see it, but it's not as good as before. Maybe only 5 or 6 on 10. So, but anyway, it's still I can see it better than see nothing. Oh, okay. Ouch. Yeah. I think I will be. I think I don't know how to. I don't think I'll be able to handle it if one day they tell me that I can't. I have to do an eye surgery. It sounds very painful, man. Yeah. I know how my friends they do like LASIK. Like putting your eyes under the laser to correct the eyesight. It sounds scary to me enough. Yeah. So it's very scary. And this is a real operation, not laser or something. That's a real operation. It's very scary. So they didn't plug out your eyeball? No, actually, the way they did it is that they broke the lens. They used some kind of I don't remember, but they used some kind of pressure or something. Just they broke the lens, and they just flush out all the broken pieces by some kind of flushing or something. So during all the process, I know everything, because they have to let us awake, because we need to control the eye. For example, they ask, okay, you look up, you look down, or you look right, you look left. So I know everything, but I didn't feel pain. Because they use a painkiller before the operation. I didn't feel the pain. But
sounds
after
like a
the
horror
operation,
movie.
Yeah.
It sounds like you're looking at your own, I don't know, man.
Sorry I joined late, but it sounds like recovery's going well.
Yeah, I'm still recovering. Thank you very much.
Maybe when we see, we'll have the Cyclops mind, a superpower, he'll be able to.
Yeah. Laser beams. See if they have that surgery, yeah.
I couldn't read too much, especially the IPICO document.
I mean, sometimes I feel like taking a laser beam to this contract myself, so yeah.
Sorry, so that's why I didn't provide any comment yet.
No worries. Yeah, I think for this call, Jason and I had talked a little bit before, so I just wanted to sort of continue it and get a little bit of alignment, especially on the IRC payment and the and how we're going to do that clawback mechanism if it's below the certain threshold. And Jason, so we were talking about, and one thing I was thinking about afterwards, when you were talking about the I'm blanking out, what's the dilution, right? Are we talking? Are you thinking that we dilute it by the percentage that they're below the like if they get, let's say, 500 megawatts
so
in
let's
the
just say that we got approval for 2 gigawatt, right, for the survey license. Right?
Survey, yeah.
Yeah, and then eventually at IRC we only got, I don't know, 1.5.
Yeah.
Right? But we have already paid them for 2, and we can't kind of get the money back, right? In a way, or maybe 1.5 is not a good way to put it.
Yeah, we gotta go lower. Yeah.
So
it would have to be like 500. Yeah.
Yeah. So we can't kind of get the money back. So whatever that we have overpaid, and correct me if I'm wrong, whatever we have overpaid, since we can't get the money back, so has proposed to dilute their shares by that equivalent amount. But the thing is, dilution at what price? I think that's the question.
Yeah, and then so let me share the screen so we're all looking at it too, because I think that'll make it a little bit easier for me.
Yeah. I'm not sure whether that'll be easier for you, but I'll try.
We'll still talk it through. Yeah. Okay, so there's two scenarios for the IRC payment, right? There's if we put it, so if it's less than the survey license capacity, then by any amount, then the investment registration achievement payment is reduced by an equivalent amount, right? So we'll get the clawback for the first payment, and we'll still so if it's let's say it's 90% of what we got under the initial survey, we would still be able to the formula would be 90% of the survey license plus 90% of the IRC approved megawatt capacity minus what we already paid, right? But then the other thing we had been talking about in the last call is if the IRC approved megawatt capacity is way lower, right, to the point where we don't want to be in the project anymore, like so low that we don't really even want them to pay us the difference. We just want to exit the project, right? So that was this section 2. Then we have in the language we put in, that Gulapa put in, that Vestas will have the right but not the obligation to sell its shares to IPICO at a price no less than basically at a price of however much money we put in to date, right? So the difficulty then is if IPICO says they don't want to buy our shares, if they don't have the money to buy those shares, then what do we do at that point, right? Because now we're trying to sell our shares, so dilution's typically just for funding, not for trying to buy a counterparty, right? Trying to buy shareholding back. But so how we would figure out how we would dilute their shares, I think is the question. Yeah. And so following up on that, after our call, Jason, I was looking back at our dilution, the language we already have about how we dilute if they don't fund appropriate amounts. And so it's, amount funded on behalf of the so, if they don't pay, then, the other party then pays on their behalf. then you dilute it by the amount that was supposed to have been funded, divided by the total amount of contributions that have been paid into the project to date. But that formula doesn't really work for when you're trying to sell the project or trying to sell your share back to them, right? Unless, because we could do it a different way, and this is one of the things I was thinking, is you could dilute their shares by the percentage of the megawatts that they failed to get. So if they got, let's say they got 500 megawatts, it was 2,000 that we were originally, under the survey license, and then they only got 500, so they got 25%. You could then dilute their shares by, 75%. They lose 75% of their shares. Like, you could do it that way. It would be tough to do it by money, because I think because we're trying to sell all of our shares, that would necessarily completely dilute them out of the project, right? It would knock them out. That amount would be like, they would have no shares. It would have like 0.01% shares at that point. So.
Yeah, you're right. I think I just make some brief calculation. If they only achieve 500 megawatt out of 2 gigawatt, they'll essentially have to kind of sell us the entire project. Or we will. They will be kind of diluted all the way.
When you say, okay, and so what are you using as the numerator
if I use
denominator? Yeah.
If I use so assuming if I use survey license, they got 2 gigawatt, we'll be paying them about $7 million, right, a survey license, right? And then at IRC, if we only achieve 500 megawatt, that would mean that they are due only $1.5 million at this point in time. But then we have to retrospectively calculate what should be the right amount for the survey license, right? Because the survey license now has to be reduced to 500 instead of 2 gigawatt.
Right.
Right. So if you reduce the survey license payment to 500 instead of 2 gigawatt, it means that we will pay about 1.8 million thereabouts in survey license, plus the 1.5, that will be 3.3 million total. But we have already paid 7.1 or 7 million. So there's 3.7 million that they have to return to us. Make sense?
Yeah, 3.7 million that they would have to return to us, and that's not the, that's the clawback, right? Not the buyback.
Yeah, that's the clawback. So we have to claw back $3.7 million from them. But then those guys are not going to come up with $3.7 million.
Yeah. So in that case, so if what you just described happens, then that would be covered under this section 1. If it's less than if it's depending on whatever we make this percentage in section 2, but that would be covered in this section 1. And if they don't do that, if they don't pay us back that amount, then that already sends them into the this development budget shortfall section. So we're set on that, right? We're set on the, and if
No,
so
we would do that budget shortfall.
Because this would be, well, let me say, I don't think we are in it yet. I think we should be. I think that's a change that we need to make to the development budget shortfall. I think we should dilute, if it's a payment, if it's related to a payment, not for shares, but just a milestone payment, then that should send us into the development budget shortfall. That's how, like, that would be a thing that you could dilute. Like, you could at least, figure out easily what the amounts are, right? Because you can be like 3.7 million out of, okay, total amount that everybody's contributed up to this point. And you can figure out how to dilute that. I think that I think is a little bit more clear. I think we would need to update this development budget shortfall language to make that clear. So it's not just talking about the the milestones of the DSA, but also the
but if you do it that way via the development budget, it means that we have to fund first before they get diluted. And nobody's I don't think we'll be able to fund first to get them diluted. So if at 500
I see.
Yeah, so you have to fund before they get diluted. So we won't fund to get them diluted, right? And then you get more cash trapped in the SPV.
Correct. Yeah. No, good point. You're right. So you would have to do it differently. It would need a different section. You're right. Yeah. But we could use the same. Okay. So for that though, you're right. We can't use this section. But we could use typical dilution language, and then if that's the solution, if we're okay with just diluting, but what about if we want to sell the project at that? What if we because we were also talking about if it's below the certain threshold that we could force them to buy it back, right? And then that's a different scenario than the clawback, because the clawback is us getting. I mean, basically we would own 100% of the project, whereas the other way is we'd be out of the project if we force a buyback.
So I think, irregardless, if that happens, we will want to force a clawback first, right? To try and get back the money. And in the event that we don't get back the money, they will get diluted, and we'll get whatever the shareholding is. And at that point in time, whether we want to sell it or not, it's up to us, and we'll be selling a larger portion of the shares to try to recover the money.
Okay, so you don't think? Okay, I mean that's easier. I'm good with that.
Because it would be. I'm just thinking logically, it would be dumb on our end to say that I'm just going to sell my shares because you fuck it up, and then we're selling a smaller portion. What I think would be more reasonable would be you fuck it up, you pay for it, and I want a bigger portion of the shares, and I'll try to recover as much as I can, whether it's 100% or not, or 99% or 90%.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Then in that case, I think we can get rid of. This section then, and then replace it.
Wait, hold on. Yeah, is my understanding correct? Do you, or what? When you talk to IPICO, is there anything that we should be aware of on this?
Yeah, I think when I talked to them and I told them about that situation where the actual capacity in the later stage lower than the expected capacity at the survey license stage, and they just prefer the idea that in this case they owe us some amount of premium, and they want us to offset that amount with the next milestone, next premium payment. For example, if they owe us certain amount after the survey license, and the next milestone would be IRC, for example, the capacity of IRC is lower than the capacity at the survey license, and they owe us some money. So instead of paying back, I don't think they have the money to pay us back the difference. But they want us to carry forward that the debt amount and offset with the next payment. The next payment would be PPA, and whatever we are going to pay them for PPA would be offset with the debt amount from the previous premium payment. So that is the idea they told us. They don't want to pay back, or they don't have money to pay back. So we can either get them diluted by taking their share, or we offset with the next payment. So I mean that are the solution for us to consider. I think we should get it diluted, but even if we get the diluted for maybe 100% of their share, they still owe us some money. So in that case, we have to offset it with the next payment, or we sell the project and get some return, or we have to accept it as a development risk. So that is my thinking. they will not return anyway. So we need to do what we can control. We cannot force them to pay us back because they maybe have no money. So we have to get their share. We need to offset with the next payment, or we sell it to someone else and recoup what we have paid. So that is my idea.
Yeah. So I think we can replace with the dilution provision first, and then you have additional language of if this is still not sufficient, then we have to adjust in the next payment.
So, what if they don't sign the PPA, right? And they owe us the money.
Or then I'll take it as development risk. Like this. So what we'll do is if it really goes south, our only way to recover is to take control of. Well, it's almost like we take over the shares and then we try to sell it off for whatever amount of money we can get to recover our costs.
Yeah. So we can say that we cannot have a 100% risk-free development project. So for certain amount that we cannot recover, we need to consider it whether it's a development risk or not. So that is something we need to factor in, and we need to accept it. Or we have to negotiate the first survey license payment, maybe at a lower amount to minimize our development risk.
But do you think that they want 6,000, right? Do you think we can lower that some more?
I think we have to try, because I think recently the government also trying to ask MYT to prepare a kind of solution for the offshore wind development, and the idea is that the block that the government's going to award to the developer would be in the range from 300 to 500 megawatt for each block. So I think very low possibility that the government will award 1 gigawatt or 2 gigawatt block to any single developer. So I think that is the situation. And based on that, we can argue. You can come back to IPICO and argue about that. Given the current situation, very high chance that we will get the IRC or PPA for maximum 500 megawatt. So I think even though we can get the survey license for 2 gigawatt, but only 500 megawatt to be awarded. So in that case, we can you can tell them that okay, we may consider to pay for based on 500 megawatt only for the survey license milestone. And later on, if they get another 500 megawatt PPA, then we can consider to pay additional survey license plus the PPA premium. So I think we defer the payment at the end of the day to avoid any risk of the upfront payment.
Yeah, I think if you can kind of talk to them and they agree, that would be the best. So that kind of help them mitigate the risk of getting fully diluted, right? Yeah, because if they get paid lower at the first milestone, we don't need to adjust so badly such that they get zero. However, in the event that whatever the amount that we get higher than at IRC or at PPA, we can always top up. Because we still have 62 clause 3, right? So that clause is there. If the IRC approved megawatt capacity is greater then we will top up the money.
Yeah.
We still. We can talk that. I mean, that would be a great solution. I think from my perspective is reducing the upfront, because I think that I think the dilution is going to be tricky, a tricky mechanism. It would be better if we just can avoid it altogether by reducing, if we were able to reduce the initial payment by a significant enough amount to make it so that that there's almost no risk of dilution, right? Because there's almost no risk of them having to pay us, of clawback happening in the second then.
Yeah.
That'll make the contract much simpler, much easier, I think, to sell internally. And,
Yeah, what do you think they need for how much they need from survey license to IRC? Because the way they want to do this is to fund their own DevEx, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So I think they have to fund they have to fund the DevEx after the survey license, and also I think they also want to recover some of the amount they spend in order to obtain the survey license. I think they have already paid some money and they are going to pay some more until they get the survey license. So the intention is to recover what they have paid and what they are going to fund the development together with Vespa. So I think in that case, we still can be able to try to minimum our upfront payment. I think instead of paying 6,000 per megawatt for 2 gigawatt, I think we can say that we agree 6,000 per megawatt, but we will pay maybe for 500 megawatt as a survey license, and the remaining can be paid maybe at the later milestone, IRC, PPA, or whatever, just to try to push on the big payment toward the end of the deployment stage.
Yeah, I think if you can do that, that would be great. I think the only question that I have is, whether if we pay 500, it means, let me check. So how much is 500? So if we pay them 500 for 500 megawatt, we'll be paying essentially about $1.8 billion. It's 1.8 as the upfront fee. It's $1.8 million enough for them to recover some of their cost back, plus paying whatever that's required for their 49% from survey license to IRC. Because if $1.8 million is not sufficient for them to do that, they will never agree to it, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, but okay, why don't you talk to them and see whether we can kind of lower that or not. So maybe in the meantime, we can still draft the dilution mechanism, and you can highlight to them what's the problem now in the whole as we look at the contract. You said that, look, if we have to pay you this, it's fine. We can adjust it, but at a point in time where we don't know at IRC, depending on how much we get approved, they will potentially get diluted to zero.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's what they want as well. End of the day, they also want to make a premium on their development cost, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe the best way to do this is to pay them lower upfront, and then we top it up as and when we progress further in the project.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think we should try it.
And so for the dilution question too, because I'm thinking about it now with getting the rest that's owed in the PPA payment, because typically the way that you structure dilution is you can't ever get someone to 0%, right? You can only, because you're just going to get them to like 0.1%, right? So no matter how much extra that we pay into there, right? It'll only get them closer to 0.001%, right? You'll never actually hit zero.
Yeah.
The way that it's calculated. So there's not really an extra amount, right? The way the formula is determined. So I'm trying to think of how you would determine what they would pay, how they would pay us back at the PPA stage if we did the dilution method, right? I mean, we could. I feel like we just keep complicating this, and this is maybe a complicated solution. But you could do it where if you dilute them to a certain percentage, then they can't go any lower than that, and anything beyond that comes out of the PPA payment.
Sorry, your question being to
just if that's a solution, if that's a question of do you want to do that? I guess is that like how I'm trying to think of how can we do the dilution and then how would you determine what's the amount that would be owed in the PPA payment, right? Because you can dilute them infinitely, and it'll just make their percentage that they owe of the SPV, it'll make it them 0.0001%, but it'll never make they can never be at 0% via the dilution, right? So how would you determine what should be repaid in the PPA payment? How would you determine that amount? Like what?
And if we get them diluted to 0.1%, then the amount that we have to pay at PPA is almost nothing, right?
yeah.
Oh, I see. Okay, so we would have the PPA execution payment not just set at 51%. We would have this set at the current shareholding of the parties.
Yeah.
So then it doesn't make sense because by then we have 99%, so we pay for 99%.
Yeah. You would flip it. You'd have to flip it, right? Yeah. Yeah, you're right. Wait, yeah. How would that work?
Yeah.
They would have to pay 99%, which obviously if they haven't been paying up to this point, it's unlikely that they're going to pay 99%.
No, we have to pay because the investors shall pay IPICO for the sufficient PPA capacity using the formula of 51%, which is investors' share. Yeah, by then
I'm with you. Yeah,
99%. Yeah, so we have
if you tried
99%.
I was thinking if we tried to flip it, and so they would owe the 99% instead of us, right? Change the language, but even that wouldn't make. I mean, you could do it so you only have to pay them for their percentage of the project, right? So right now we're paying 51%. Instead, we would pay them, whatever their, you just turn it around. So you pay them 0.1% but then, 0.1% of that amount. Whatever their share is at that point. I feel like we just dilute because I think we're getting too if we get to a point where they're 0.01% owners, then that means that the project came in at like 20 megawatts, right? It would have to, in order to get them that small, the project would have to come in at a tiny amount, and so it's unlikely that we would continue with the project. Either side would want to continue with it at that point, right?
Sorry, can you repeat that again? What to think about?
I guess we're trying to fit these two concepts together, right? The dilution provision as well as the PPA provision. But I think we just keep the pay back the PPA amount, right? Have it be paid back in the PPA. We keep that as an alternative option. But I don't think it works in conjunction with the dilution provision. I think those two concepts don't work well together. And the only way, I think that we would just go with the dilution provision where for, whatever they miss the megawatts by, we dilute their shares. And then we'll figure out the PPA, and then I guess